I have a question. What is your treasure? What are you working hard to obtain or to maintain? Why is it important to you? When you get it, where do you keep it? If suddenly it vanished, what would you do? How would you feel? We have dear friends who lost everything but literally the clothes on their backs in the Palisades fire. What life-changing devastation. How would you cope if that happened to you? Where is your treasure? Jesus talked a lot about treasure. For instance, in Matthew 6, verses 19 to 21, he said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Of course, most people, including those who claim to be Christians, do exactly the opposite of what he commanded. We want earthly security, and that means money. I've been sharing some of my experiences in Hollywood. From the very beginning, over 100 years ago, the heart of the entertainment business has been centered on money and power and the perks they can bring, the treasures of this world. And Hollywood's success can suck you completely into that powerful treasure-hunting system. For 10 years in Hollywood, I drove a Corvette convertible, a car I had dreamed of owning since I was a teenager. One day I pulled up to a stop sign in Beverly Hills. Suddenly, two attractive women in a car next to me rolled down their window and asked, "Are you somebody important?" That's not something you expect to hear at a stop sign. I told them no. Then they asked, "Can we have lunch with you?" Absolutely not. I was glad my car had a lot of power to speed away. If you have any kind of success in Hollywood, the treasures of money and power will open a candy store in front of you. But all the candy is poison. As I've said before, I wasn't in Hollywood to hunt the treasures of money and power. Success given by the Lord did come. The fact is that only the tiniest percentage of Hollywood writers are ever able to create a TV series that actually makes it to the screen. Within a period of 5 or so years, 3 of mine made it to the screen, and that is a miracle. But every one of them brought war and loss. In the last chapter, I told you about the first one, Gabriel's Fire, and my sad experience with the great actor James Earl Jones. It was a series about redemption. The second one I sold went to USA Network. If I had been rejected for stories about redemption in my first series, why not go even harder in number 2? Just because you're attacked doesn't mean you give up. My second series I based on the scene that I had written for The Equalizer about a hitman who had gone to hell and had come back. I sold the concept to a senior vice president in charge of new series development, and I had a great time working with her. In this version, the hitman is brought back, then told he's going to live a different life. In each episode, he receives an assignment about someone who is going to do something terrible that will destroy them. It will be his job to stop them before it's too late. A kind of a supernaturally empowered equalizer. Each assignment was brought to the hitman by an unusual angel messenger from heaven. How unusual? One of them was played by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The hitman was portrayed by the great Canadian actor Nick Mancuso. A strange fact or two. I titled my series Matrix. It was the name I gave my hitman. This was years before the Matrix films were produced. Also, I cast as a series regular a talented young Canadian actress named Carrie Ann Moss. who became a star of the Matrix films along with Keanu Reeves. There were many challenges in producing the Matrix TV series. It was a Canadian co-production. I'd never been involved in anything like that, and it was not easy. There were rules that had to be followed, and our budget was inadequate. Nevertheless, Carol and I and our daughter Sharissa, who was still in high school, moved to Toronto and production began. We weren't shooting a pilot. We had been picked up for 13 episodes. Though it was so hard to do, finally we had a rough cut of the first episode, in which the hitman goes to hell, comes back, and finds out what his life will be. The rough cut went to the USA Vice President, and I got a note from her saying that it was a step up in quality for their whole network. But then it went to the President. Apparently she had been totally unaware of anything we had been doing, which was bizarre even for Hollywood. When she saw the rough cut, she said, "I won't allow a series like this on my network." Very soon, I was fired. We went back to L.A. Short time later, Nick Mancuso called me, and he was angry. He said, "They're trying to make me into the happy hitman from hell." It didn't work. Very quickly, the series failed. For me, losing Matrix was sad, but it was about to get much sadder. Why are there so few servant warriors for Jesus in this world? Because those who claim to believe in him refuse the life that he said was going to come if a person gave everything into his hands. He warned that his followers would face persecution, rejection, and loss in a lifelong wrestling match with the powers of darkness that the Apostle Paul wrote about in Ephesians chapter 6. People refuse this kind of life because their treasure is in this world. And the false prophets of the prosperity gospel train them to believe their financial success will come if they follow God's rules. What did the loss of the Matrix series mean for my family? The U.S. production company that I had been working for refused to pay a significant amount of money that was owed on my contract. I had to sue them. Most of it was finally paid, but not in time to save our home. We lost it. We had purchased it 5 years before and had wanted it to be a kind of ministry center. Over the years, many groups had met there. But for me, the saddest part of losing it was that we had built a large art studio in the backyard for Carol, who is a painter. All gone. My servant warrior wife didn't bat an eye when we lost our home. As much as we loved that house, it wasn't our treasure. God has never failed us. When we left that home for the last time, another one was waiting. Years before, in the strangest way, God had guided us to purchase a home in the mountains of Central California. It was there that we went when our L.A. home was gone, and we are still here. As beautiful as it is to live in the mountains, this is not our final home either. It is not where our treasure is stored. The last series that I sold was through Universal. Eventually, after Matrix, I went back to the studio for a short time to assist in writing and producing one of their series. When it was finished, I stayed. A meeting was arranged for me with the president of UPN, the United Paramount Network, an organization that doesn't exist anymore. I liked this man a lot. In the meeting, I asked him if he could do anything, what kind of series would he like to see on his network? He said something completely unexpected. He said he would like to see a series about the medical and the mystical. That was the beginning of my last series, The Burning Zone. In my pilot script, I wrote about archaeologists who open a cave in a Mexican mountain that has been sealed since before Noah's flood. In doing so, they release a virus that has been dormant for eons. But this virus is like no other. It is the master virus that controls all the other viruses in the world, and it has a collective consciousness. So when it invades a person, it takes control and speaks through them. If it is not eradicated, the human race will come under its complete domination. The mystical aspects of the virus were clear. It was a metaphor for supernatural evil. In the pilot episode, a small group of expert virologists are brought together by the U.S. government to combat this enemy. The leader of the group was played by a very young Jeffrey Dean Morgan in his first series lead. He later became a major star in The Walking Dead. Our pilot shoot went very well. Quickly, the series was picked up for 13 episodes. My producing partner Jim McAdams and I were called for a meeting at UPN. This should have been a kind of honeymoon event to kick off the project. But when we got there, we met someone new, the woman who was the CEO of the network. The president, the man I had dealt with, wasn't in the meeting, and I never saw him again. 10 or 12 members of the woman's team were gathered in the room to meet us. When we entered, she was yelling at them about nothing that had to do with our series. We had barely sat down when she turned to me and yelled that she never wanted to see the virus in our pilot episode again. But that was what the series was about. I asked her why she had picked us up if she didn't like what we had created. She yelled that she loved the burning zone. When the meeting was over, and Jim and I were waiting for the elevator, I said to him that I heard distant pounding. He asked what I meant. I told him they're nailing together my cross. And so it was. Within 10 agonizing episodes, I was fired. Jeffrey Dean Morgan tried to defend me. They fired him too, just as his career was beginning to take off. You can watch scenes from the pilot episode of The Burning Zone on my show reel at our website, thorncrownstudios.com. Each of the 3 series I created became a body blow to my career, and each was a test. Why was I in Hollywood? What treasure was I working for? Let me tell you about the real treasure. One day during the production of The Burning Zone, Jim McAdams walked into my office and sat down. It was clear that something was wrong, but he was silent. This was the 3rd series that we had worked on together. I knew that Jim was a very private man. He was an executive producer of the old school, with a string of impressive credits that went back decades. Before The Equalizer, he had produced the Kojak series that starred Telly Savalas, and before that other great shows. But I knew under the image of a consummate professional, like so many in Hollywood, he was a broken-hearted man. This day, I didn't ask him what was wrong. After sitting a while together in silence, I felt impelled to ask him something else. I said, "Jim, have you ever prayed and asked Jesus to be your Savior?" He said, "No." "Would you like to do that right now?" He said, "Yes." So there in my office at Universal Studios, Jim and I prayed together, and a soul that Jesus loved so much that he died for him received forgiveness and eternal life. Jim's life began to be transformed. Being there for that moment was worth more to me than all the wealth, success, and awards that Hollywood could ever bestow. Loss, rejection, and failure meant nothing compared to that. My dear friend and brother Jim McAdams entered heaven 18 years ago. He's waiting for me there, and it can't be too long before we meet again. What a joy! To be used in some small way in the salvation of a soul is worth more than all the wealth in this world. As Jesus said in Luke 15:10, "I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." Whatever treasure Carol and I have is not stored here. If you give your will to Jesus Christ, telling him to do anything with your life that he wants, you will find a life filled with the greatest joys and the greatest challenges. As the years pass and you continue to give your life to Him each day, your entire value system will be transformed into His eternal value system, and you will be a servant warrior for the King. Satan does not waste resources. Live a life worthy to be attacked, and don't be surprised when you are. In fact, as James, the brother of Jesus, wrote in James 1, verses 2-4, consider it all joy when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So where is your treasure? Instead of using the gifts that God has given to you for yourself, isn't it time to give them back to Him? What are the needs that you see around you in lost and hurting people? How can you meet some of those needs? How can you introduce them to the King? It all begins with praying for them each day. And whatever God has called you to do, don't give up. For us, just because we faced such war over our TV series years ago, doesn't mean that we've given up. Recently, we created a concept for a new television series that presents the truth of Jesus as never before. You can watch our dramatic presentation of Sanctum of Shadows on this channel and on our website, thorncrownstudios.com. Also, for several years, we've been producing a YouTube series, Patterns of Supernatural Phenomena, to open people's eyes about what is really happening as we race toward the return of Jesus our King. Season 3 is coming soon. Though our resources have decreased, our vision to serve the Lord continues to increase. So, my friend, what kind of treasure hunt have you been on? Has it been worth it? Isn't it time to start working for treasure that will never fade away?